popping on a lot faster than I can keep up in writing down. So I'm not going to worry about it. It is 11 a.m. so we can get started to respect everybody's time. Welcome to Ad Talk Tuesday, sessions that are put on by the University of Idaho to help get information out there about crops in current season crop issues. My name's Kasha Duelman. I am the seed potato specialist, and I'm based here in Idaho Falls. And the sessions typically start out as we go around the table and people give crop updates about what's happening currently in the season regarding potatoes, small grains, sugar beets, onion, forages, basically anything that is grown. We primarily focus on southern Idaho, southeastern Idaho, but there are people on here on these sessions from other parts of the state and the region, including Washington and Oregon. I don't know if we have anyone from Washington and Oregon today. I don't see, but in other words, the sessions aren't necessarily limited to southern Idaho, but that's been the primary focus. So with that, we'll start out with our crop updates. And I wanted to start with small grains first. And I know Juliet is on the phone, and I know there's several other people on the call who can contribute some information. So I'll let Juliet start.
Okay, so Kasha, I may be cutting in and out a little bit. So can you let me know that you hear me well enough right now?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so I'm on the road, but I've been looking at a lot of crops and keeping things up to date with the cereals in southern Idaho. I wanted to start first with the growth stage. We are at various stages close to harvest, around harvest for southern Idaho for our winter grains. What we're looking at is late soft dough to hard dough to actually harvest starting in some of the southern Idaho winter wheat area, winter barley. So harvest has started for us. So as we go further along, obviously we will be dating out in importance as cereals goes into harvest and potatoes and sugar beets and other crops go into full swing. So the winter wheat in the Aberdeen and eastern Idaho area, we are at about the last irrigation to where the irrigation has been cut off. And good news is relatively low disease pressure and foliar disease especially. We are seeing our normal foot rot diseases in the winter wheat. And yeah, when you have a lack of crop rotation, we will be having some lodging going on. And that's pretty normal for winter wheat in the area. So for the winter wheat, as I mentioned, low foliar diseases, the spring wheat, spring barley, obviously we're in a lot more diverse crop growth stages. Some of the crop is definitely into soft dough or in final stages of grain fill. So I would expect in probably another week to start seeing a lot of the irrigation being shut off. Some of the areas that we have, like Ashton, Soda Springs, we are going to continue to have irrigation. And we have very low foliar diseases again, except for just a little bit of stripe rust here and there. So it's the disease pressure for foliar pathogens has been pretty low this year. Good overall grain fill conditions, a long, cool grain fill period. The only major disease problems we've been seeing are associated with Cereus nematode and maybe some of the foot rot diseases like Rhizoctonia or Rhizoctonia, I think, than usual. Cereus nematode continues to be a problem, but I haven't noticed any in spring barley at this point. But overall, a really good year, good for diseases, low insect pressure, and we're headed toward the home stretch at this point. So I can't tell if any of the normal people are on, like Jen Bonderwell or Trenton Stanger, or Steve Hines. So if anybody wants to add anything, please just jump right in.
Juliet, I'm on. This is Trenton Stanger. Just want to mirror what you said. Yeah, the winter wheat water's been shut off. It's starting to turn. Spring wheat guys are looking at their last irrigation now. Fields I've looked at in the last couple of weeks have been relatively clean. I have seen a little stripe rust in the American Falls area. But overall, I've been pretty pleased with the overall look and of the crop. So I'm excited to see what the yield coming out will look like.
Yeah, I agree with you. I was I'd say less than optimistic earlier in the season. We had a lot of cold temperatures. We've got a lot of cold damage. And I was really believing that was going to really cut into our yields. But things had a nice, relatively even keel grain field period and not excessively hot. So maybe that'll make up for my previous lack of optimism.
Right.
I can add that there is a little bit of lodging in the Blackfoot area on a couple of fields as normal. That's the only real thing that I've been out seeing. And then there have been a few people that have been irrigating fields that are really close to harvest and maybe damaging some of their quality. So there's still some need for education, I think. Still.
Yeah, thanks, Reed. I agree. There's always those that continue to irrigate even when the irrigation should have long been cut off. We get frustrated with seeing that, and that's where we may have to pay attention to maybe some falling numbers areas, as well as where we have the pivot points or pivot arms on the potato fields that are irrigating into the winter wheat fields. We've also got some education to do there. That can lead to some potential sprouting and the drying down of the winter grain that's next to those fields, and that could also contribute to some low falling numbers issues. Any other comments that you can see? Like I said, we're heading into the end game of the growing season for our small grains, and I think we're going to have a decent year. Okay, Kasha?
All right, thanks, Juliet. That was great, especially as you're driving on the highway. You're not driving, are you?
Oh, heck no.
I'm just kidding.
Dale's driving.
Okay, good. Well, be safe. And I wanted to bring the next crop update to, let's do sugar beet. Anyone want to give an update on sugar beet? I'm not seeing some people that would be able to speak to that. James, you might be able to offer some comments on sugar beets and what's happening with sugar beets.
Other than powdery mildew made an appearance a few weeks ago, and it still seems to be at low levels, and we're just waiting for it to explode, really.
How, so with the powdery mildew, did we have, jog my memory, with the spore trapping network, where the spores were picked up prior to visible symptoms, is that correct?
Yes, we seem to, like clockwork, seem to detect it 2 to 3 weeks before we see symptoms, at least at Palmer. And we get our spray on, at a good timing, really, because of that. We can target our scouting efforts. But yeah, I mean, people should have got their sprays on by now, and we're seeing it at low levels in our field trials. We're just, in the untreated plots, we were just waiting for it to really develop. That's all now. And there was a bit of a cercospora early on in the year as well at a few selected places.
Yeah, I found that interesting because I'm not familiar with how problematic Cercospora is out here. In the Red River Valley, it's a chronic issue, and it's something we see every year. Do you know? Do you have a feeling for what that?
Well, what it is that I think where farmers over irrigate, and they have a field history of Cercospora as well. That seems to be the key things. The spores don't spread very far. So it's not like powdery mildew, which I think is kind of a longer distance spore dispersal. I think Cercospora is, it only disperses by a few hundred meters each year.
So for that reason, do you think a spore trap might not be as informative for Cercospora, or like that might only detect local infections or more? Or
correct. Yeah.
Okay.
It's quite a large spore as well.
So is there any other comments or questions for James about sugar beets, or can anyone offer any more insight on what's happening in the sugar beet world? Driving from the highway, they look pretty good on this side of the state between Aberdeen and Idaho Falls. The fields look really nice. So hopefully that that's a good omen. Does anybody have any other comments or questions on sugar beets or cereals that we've already covered? Anyone want to give an update on forages or canola or other crops?
On the forages, they were at that first crop, it kind of got split between some early people that harvested, and then of course a lot of that crop got damaged. And then people had to wait a long time and got way into full bloom before they could really harvest that first crop. So the second crop is starting right now, but it's really split because the first harvest was really split between early forage harvest and the later one. And there was getting to be, at least in Blackfoot, kind of a buildup of some weevils and some aphids in the fields. But quite a few of my growers went out and sprayed, and then I checked the fields after they had sprayed, and it had really knocked those populations down, at least in the people that harvested early. And then, so the second crop is coming off right now, but there'll be almost 2 big slugs of second crop coming off. It's a bit of a weird year. But the quality of the second crop is looking good, and drying conditions, haymaking conditions are excellent right now. So
yeah, and the forecast looks like it's going to remain that way.
Around here, like the second crop is kind of making up for the first crop, because a lot of the people who waited on that first crop still got rained on. So they let everything go to bloom, and then they cut it, and it still got rained on. So there's almost like nobody around this area in northern East Idaho really got a good quality first crop. But second crop looks like it'll be pretty optimistic. There's pretty heavy pressure from alfalfa weevil, and so the organic guys get hit pretty hard. But most people who have a pretty good IPM program are doing just fine. So.
One other thing I can add is over there in Caribou County, I saw some, and over there towards McCammon and Lava, I saw some fields that had severe damage from windrow damage, from the windrows laying in the same spot for too long, and then the new growth that was coming up from the crown, the new sprouts from the ground just died, and so we had almost dead crowns underneath those windrows afterwards. It just laid on the ground way too long.
I've seen that here too.
And then the second thing too, Joseph, is that those fields right now, there's major weed pressure coming up under those damaged windrows. So some of those fields they won't be in alfalfa next year. They'll just be a redo for something else.
I didn't realize that it would cause that much of a stand issue with, in the Midwest, we have that problem all the time because it's always raining.
Well,
so
part of the problem, Cash, is we're not used to it, and so we don't get it moved. And it doesn't happen frequently enough to where we worry that much about it. But this year, the rains came, stayed, the windrows stayed in one spot and did some damage. Whereas I think back there in the Midwest, people are more cognizant that that can damage it, and so they manage for it.
Okay, so it's a management issue then primarily.
One of the big critiques from those forage growers in the Midwest is like they'll say that here in Idaho we have some of the best drying conditions in the world, and we take the longest to get our hay off the field. We should be the quickest ones to get our hay off the field. If you listen to like Dan Undersander and those kinds of guys. So that causes some different problems. Where in the Midwest they manage for that. They know how to do wide windrows and they get it off quick. Whereas here we have big, thick, narrow windrows, and it just doesn't come off as quick. And
they also use acid to desiccate it and dry it out a lot faster too and get it off. So they know what the problem is, and they manage for it.
Okay, yeah, it was kind of unusual here to have such a wet, I felt like it was an unusually wet June too, and I hardly had to irrigate our trial. Okay, any questions or comments from anyone else who's listening on forages or other crops aside from the big ones? You can always come back to any of these crops if we have comments or someone thinks of something along the way. And if so, please feel free to interject or ask questions or provide your commentary at any time. So that leaves potatoes. I'm hoping there are some other potato folks on the line who can help fill in my gaps. When I'm driving around eastern Idaho, I am noticing we're essentially at row closure. And in my own trials, we're starting to get beyond bloom senescence. There's a lot of senescing blossoms. I did notice some blackleg in our trials at a very low level. I'm assuming it's seed-borne, but it's a very, very low level that we're seeing. I don't see that every year in our trials, but some years we see it more than others. And I'm trying to think of what else. I saw some botrytis today in our trials. The lower canopy is getting some of the botrytis symptoms. I know there's some early blight spores that have been detected with the spore trapping network. So I'm expecting that for there to be some pressure for that, especially lower in the canopy. I remember, if James Woodall can fill in some details on this, but I recall that white mold spores were found. Those are certainly flying around, and we certainly have senescing blossoms, which provide the energy source for that particular pathogen to get started and cause white mold. My understanding is a lot of growers already implement just automatically a spray regimen that helps protect against white mold. The risk for, correct me if I'm wrong, James, but the risk for late blight seems to be essentially very low right now, especially in the eastern part of Idaho. I'm not sure about the Rupert area, but we haven't had any spore detections in the southeastern part, and we haven't had the humidity requirements. So I think we're pretty low risk right now for that particular disease. Like Juliet said, in the cereals, she was seeing higher than normal Rhizoc. In our trials, we're seeing good levels of Rhizoctonia. I wouldn't say it's any worse than normal in our particular trials, but I've heard reports elsewhere that they've been seeing quite a bit of it, of Rhizoctonia canker in potato. So that's all I have for potato. It seems pretty quiet for the most part, but I wanted to ask the group and also James to see if you have anything more to add for Idaho potatoes.
Hi, Kasia. All I've got to add is we just seem to have a lot of blackleg samples and aerial stem rock samples coming into the lab recently. So results so far suggest they're all Pectobacterium atrosepticum, but just seems to be a bit more than last year.
Good to know. Thanks for that, James. Kind of corroborates what I've been seeing in our trial. We don't normally see much of it, and we're seeing it. So anyone else would like to add their observations or questions or comments on potato? Okay, well, I'm not seeing any activity, so I think we can move on to our next segment of these sessions. At every session, we have featured topics with guest speakers. Last week, Xi Liang presented on her alternative crops and cropping systems. We've had people talk about, well, Reed and Joseph talked about, oh gosh, thrips, no, leaf, what's the insect?
Talked about thrips, and we also did a deal on teff.
So we've had some interesting conversations about crops and insect issues. And so today we are switching gears and doing something a little bit different. And the dean for the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences at the University of Idaho graciously offered to provide us an update with what is happening at the university and in the college. And I feel very, I guess I'm very grateful that you're taking time out of your busy schedule to share with us some of the things that are going on and give us an update straight from the horse's mouth. So with that, I'll introduce Dean Michael Parrella.
Okay, Kasha, thanks for that introduction. And maybe I'll start off by acknowledging, the success that you're having with the Ag Talk Tuesdays. And I know Kasha and Pam and Juliet are kind of responsible for organizing it. So I think, I think that's a really, really positive thing. And again, it speaks to just the idea of it's a brave new world in terms of getting information out to people. And this is one way, I think, to do it. And obviously, it's sort of setting the stage for maybe what the future is going to hold as well. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to run through some slides, and a couple of points I want to make maybe at the onset is that I still am very bullish and excited about the college and moving the college forward. I think we still, we've done some remarkable things in 4 years. And again, this is my 5th year as the dean. So I'll kind of review a little bit of that. So, and there's a great deal of momentum in the college. And certainly my hope is that we can sustain that and maintain that. And obviously there are some huge challenges with respect to the pandemic and the budget shortfall that we're facing. So I'll talk a little bit about that. And then obviously, we are soldiering on. So we as a college, I think we are fulfilling the land-grant mission, the teaching, the research, and the extension. We're doing that really on the backs of the faculty. And that's something that I will come back to maybe again and again as I go through the different slides, because, clearly, as we have more budget impacts, we're turning to the faculty to pick up a lot of the funding in a sense. And obviously we have fewer faculty, we have budget cuts, and yet we're still delivering, I think, all that programming. And so I think that is remarkable, and I can't emphasize that enough. And my hope is that will continue. We just need to get through this crisis, and I think we're going to be fine. And I would like to say we're going to come out of this stronger as a college. I realize for a lot of people it's hard to envision that, but hopefully after I go through this presentation, you will see why I am so optimistic about the future. So with that as an introduction, I will go through the slides, and Carly Shefflin, who is our director of communications and marketing in the college, will kind of I'll ask her to change slides as we go through. So I'm going to start off with kind of a boilerplate, some information about the college just to set the stage. So again, I think most of you know this, and obviously if you're part of the university, this should be old news, but again, it's worth telling the story about the college. And we need to do that. I need to do that. You need to do that as much as possible. If we become complacent and we assume that the legislatures or our stakeholders know what we're doing, we're in trouble, because a lot of times they don't. And the thing, I don't want to get too off the subject here, but basically we do have, some of it is on this slide. I'll just go through it very quickly. 225 faculty, almost all the staff in the university are in the college with 725. We have 9 research and extension centers, 3 affiliate centers, 4,000 acres. We are in every county, and you all know that. So when I think about a legislator, I don't care where that legislator is from, but we have programs in their jurisdiction that basically is positive and is benefiting their constituents or their stakeholders. I think that's something that no other college can can make that statement. No other university in the state can say that, and yet I'm not sure we're effective at delivering that information to our legislators. So that just goes back to a comment I made a little earlier about the idea that we cannot become complacent. We cannot assume that people know what we're doing. So I'll talk a little bit about the undergraduate situation, graduate students in the college. We have about, all told, more than 1,000 students, undergraduates and graduate students. We have 7 academic departments now with 41 basically programs for grad and undergraduates. We've obviously gone down from 8 departments to 7. So we have merged food science with animal and vet science. So that is something that took place July 1st. I'm not really going to talk about that. If there are questions about it, I'd be happy to answer it. But the only thing I'll mention is that the plan going forward is not to diminish food science, but to invest in it and to strengthen it. And so that's the reason to bring them together with animal science. And so maybe with that as a teaser, maybe that would engender some questions. But at this point, I want to be sure to make the point that we plan to strengthen and invest in food science and not diminish it moving forward. And we have a budget in excess of $80 million in the college. We are very, very fortunate to have the lion's share of our budget actually comes from state and federal sources, something that I think we constantly hear, and again, I'm getting way off this subject here, so hopefully I get through all these slides. We constantly hear about the university and state funding and that declining, right? And we've gone from a state-supported institution to state-assisted, and in many cases, state support is less than 20%. And that's not only the case in Idaho, but I think around the country. As a college, as I just mentioned, almost 50% of our budget does come from the state and federal sources. So we are an exception to that rule, something I think we can never forget, and we need to be very thankful for. So obviously we're going through a more difficult time now with budget cuts, but at the same time, we as a college, we enjoy a diversified source of funding. We have state funding for education, we have state funding and federal funding for our research programs and for our extension programs. Obviously, we have a lot of faculty that have revenue generating accounts, Y accounts, things like that. So I think we're in a position as a college, which like anytime you diversify, right, you're stronger, right? You have more options in case there are budget cuts. So I think we're in that situation, and I think that's one of the reasons why we're better able to weather this crisis. Next slide. And just continuing on with our teaching, reach, and outreach mission. This is old news here. I think we're at maybe 75,000 Idaho youth involved in UI extension and 4-H youth development, which is, I think, phenomenal. We have more than $1 million in scholarships that we award every year, more than any other college. And again, I'm going to deviate from, well, there's not really a script here since all of it is what comes to me as I'm talking here. But for the first time, and I'm getting ahead of myself here, I think, in terms of a slide to come. For the first time, we actually are acting as a unified campus in terms of undergraduate recruitment. And that has not been the case in the past. And that sounds almost like an oxymoron, because we've been talking about the need to increase undergraduate enrollment ever since I've been the dean, and actually preceded that. But there really has been no concerted campus effort to bring all the colleges together with a central recruiting effort to bring more students to campus. So in that sense, we're victims of that, and we get what we deserve, right? So that is changing now, and I would give a lot of credit to President Green, who is changing basically the structure and our approach. And again, I'm getting way off topic here, but let's assume there's a student in southeastern Idaho that is a 4.0 student, very active in FFA. He has a full scholarship to Utah State in food science. Okay, so we would like to recruit that student here. And so unless we can actually offer that student an equivalent financial package, the student is unlikely to come to Moscow, right? They're going to go to Utah State. And so that is something we have been fighting for 5 years. We have actually been prevented from stacking scholarships to increase the level of support for the best students to try and get them to come to Moscow. I mean, it is absolutely incredible. And again, it almost makes no sense, but that's the way it is. And for the first time this year, we actually have been able to put together more effective packages of financial support to recruit, to recruit students in general, but to recruit the best students to campus. And so when I think about that one simple little thing, I look at that as it bodes very well for our efforts in the future to recruit more students to campus, and maybe even more important than that, to recruit the best students. So again, one of the reasons to be optimistic as things move forward. Just continuing on with this slide, we're very proud of our, Jim Connors and the group there in ag education and extension. Basically, we train most of the ag teachers in high schools in the state, and again, that's something we're very proud of. And the ability to reach out into high schools then and have them as stakeholders, I think, is critical. Again, from an educational, just an understanding of what CALS is about in U of I, but also recruiting students into the campus. Excuse me for a second. And we remain the top college on the campus with respect to extramural grants. And again, that's, who brings in the grants, right? It's the dean's office does not do that. It's faculty. So the faculty have stepped up big time. We bring in, almost a fifth of all the support on the campus, 20% of all sponsored research. And the other thing I will mention is that this past year, it's been a fairly successful year for the campus in terms of development and fundraising. So there's going to be an announcement made, because obviously the books just closed June 30th. So we have raised about $50 million basically on the campus from a development perspective. The College of Ag and Life Sciences, and I'm very proud to say this, and this is a tribute to Jen Root, who is our Senior Director of Development, and basically the great people we have in that unit. We've raised almost half of that money. So basically almost $20 million in development has been raised by the College of Ag and Life Sciences. That is a record for us. That is a phenomenal accomplishment. Whether we can continue that sort of development pace as we're into the new 2020-2021 season, especially given the economic strain that everything is under, we'll have to see how that goes. But still, it's just a phenomenal accomplishment. By far, the college that has raised the most money externally. So again, that's just a synopsis, and hopefully I'm building a little bit of an agenda here to point to the fact that I think we have reason to be optimistic about the college moving forward. So next slide, please. Okay, so from a response perspective, I think one of the key things that happened early on in the pandemic was Governor Little declared that agriculture was an essential aspect of the state, and from an economic perspective, it has to move forward, right? It's considered essential. So just by guilt of association there, agricultural research and extension is critical as well. So that's been one of our mandates, was to follow through, try to maintain spring and summer work, while at the same time practicing, personal hygiene, social distancing measures. And again, it's the faculty doing that, it's the staff doing that, it's the students as well. So, again, kudos to them for keeping things moving and trying to do this in an environment where health and safety are maintained, and obviously that is critical. Our extension county offices, obviously being a county state university, they had to follow the guidelines coming from with respect to closures and reopening. So we were doing that. And obviously, the Ag Talk Tuesdays is an example of that third bullet point, where teaching and extension faculty and have moved their programming online. And one thing that we I say collectively here, that we as a university have been criticized, and this really comes from the legislature and from stakeholders, is that, the university, it's a little like, trying to turn the Titanic to get away from an iceberg, right? You need to plan that turn miles in advance. We're not the best historically at pivoting and changing things quickly, right? And so that's a reputation I think that we do deserve, but I feel like, to a large extent, we have dispelled that with this pandemic crisis, because end of winter quarter, basically, we shut things down, and on a dime, we pivoted and we went online. We went online from, delivering information to stakeholders, and we did that for student education on this campus as well. Not a trivial thing, basically in the middle of our session, to suddenly turn on a dime and to deliver instruction online. And it makes sense intuitively that if it's just a lecture course, that's probably something that, can be done without that much difficulty. But if you are dealing with a laboratory course where hands-on experiential learning are part of that course, then obviously you all recognize that there are some real challenges there. In addition, we have some faculty that are very fluid working online. We have some that it's a brave new world. So again, the idea that everyone stepped up, we have met that challenge. And now I guess the focus is on the fall quarter. So we really pivoted from an instruction and delivery of information in an emergency, urgent situation back in spring. So now we had the opportunity, I think, to sit back and to do maybe more of a deliberate online preparation for instruction, so we can make that learning experience for students more effective. So that is moving forward as well. We do plan to welcome students back in the fall for on-campus instruction. That is the plan. So we are geared up for that. We'll have a hybrid a collection, basically a high flex type of instruction, where there'll be in person and then online instruction kind of going on simultaneously. Not a trivial thing to try and orchestrate. And again, each faculty member teaching his or her class is responsible for sort of the framework under which that instruction is going to take place. But again, I think our faculty have risen to the challenge. Not a trivial thing, and I think it's remarkable that we have had such a strong support from within the faculty in the College of Ag and Life Sciences. And then finally, I guess this just repeats something I've already said, that the silver lining in all of this is that there have been new skills and tools learned during this time that I think we're going to be making use of as we look to the future in terms of delivering information to both students and to our stakeholders. So again, it's hard to, we're not through this pandemic, not by any stretch of the imagination. It's a little difficult to even talk about a silver lining here, but again, I think there is one in terms of what the future is going to hold and how we deliver information. Next slide, please. Singling out extension here, Barbara Petty and her, we call it the Extension Army. Many of you on the call are part of that group. I don't want to go through everything on this slide. You can see it. Many of you are familiar with these things, but just the creativity, the dedication, basically, from the Idaho Victory Garden all the way down to, 4-H compiling information for resources and activities for children to do at home. Just really incredible. And again, I think this is something that will likely continue. We're going to probably be back to more online or in-person instruction as well. But I think this kind of a hybrid model is something that's going to be part of our culture moving forward. Next slide. Okay, our financial situation and the budget. I already alluded to the fact that we as a college are in much, much better shape than any other college on this campus. And the main reason for that is because we have a diversified source of income. And so there's a couple of things that, it's almost been the perfect storm for the campus in terms of budget calamities coming together at the same time. So when President Green started, our new president started a little over a year ago, he inherited a budget nightmare on this campus. And I believe all told, and the numbers has a tendency to vary, but we were as a campus about $22 million in debt. So that is the magnitude of the budget deficit that President Green had to deal with. So the first thing on his plate is to right that ship and to try to do it in as short a period of time as possible. So in a sense, then we were scrambling internally to try and meet that budget deficit. So then you can plan moving forward. And again, you basically run the campus with in a brave new world with a budget deficit behind you. Of course, in the middle of that, we have the pandemic crisis come crashing down, and there's two things there that that are a little scary. One is the impact on the state, and then and of course everyone is suffering from this. So the idea of there being budget budget shortfalls and budget cutbacks, it's a no-brainer. It's already happened. It's likely to continue to happen, right? No surprises there. That on top of our situation with undergraduates on the campus. How many are going to return? How many new freshmen are we going to get? Whether we're going to be able to maintain and have the sophomores and juniors and seniors come back to campus. If we have a low number there, then we're going to have an impact on tuition. So we're going to be hit by a loss of revenue because of tuition, additional cutbacks brought by the state. And then on top of that, we just dealt with trying to come up with $22 million to offset the budget shortfall from last year. So in that sense, when you think about a budget nightmare, that is basically what we are in the middle of. And so again, I sort of elaborated on what we're facing. And so, what has the campus done? And we're obviously part of the campus. So whatever the campus mandates, the college has to follow suit. So we're in the middle of a hiring freeze, right? No new hires. We have had voluntary furloughs, and now we are in a phase where we have mandatory furloughs. And we have also had sort of voluntary voluntary separation programs, and then we had an incentive for early retirement as well. So we sort of met, some of those budget shortfalls that I talked about through these mechanisms, and that will continue as we move forward. Now, what we have done as a college in terms of dealing with our budget cuts, we took some major cuts in administration in the dean's office, right? So that was the first thing we looked at, and then we tried and looked at operational expenses, recognizing these are critical, but at the same time, we can probably hold off on that, use some of the operational expenses to offset the budget cuts, with the idea that when budgets are resumed, we can go back in and we can, again, invest in operations for many of our facilities. So that's kind of what we've done superficially. But the major way in which we have been able to meet the budget cuts is the second point there at the bottom of the slide, or the penultimate last bullet point, right? Support staff formerly funded by CALS, by the College of Ag and Life Sciences, have been shifted to external funding sources. So we have gone to every faculty member, and if you as a faculty member have been supported by the college, let's say you have a technician or you have a graduate student, and the college is funding those individuals, we have asked faculty to see if they can move those expenses onto their own personal accounts. That could be grant support, it could be Y accounts, which are revenue generating accounts, and maybe other sources of funding as well. And so the faculty have stepped up big time, and they have taken on that responsibility, and that is probably the single largest way that we have been able to meet the cuts and the holdbacks, especially to our agricultural extension and the agricultural experiment station. So again, I cannot emphasize that enough. And so, what we have done in the college, and I think many of you realize this, that over the past 4 years, we have really hired 80 new faculty, which is absolutely incredible. And again, when I think about the future of the college, there's nothing that speaks more highly of our future than those new hires, because they're going to do the research, the teaching, and the extension. So I feel good about that. So it's very clear we were going to slow hiring down anyway. We just could not keep up that same pace. So in that sense, we were going to slow down hiring, but the rate of hiring is going to slow down even more, right? So vacant positions, and we have a number of them that are critical, right? We're going to be slow to hire them, and we're going to basically have we have to enter into a strategic hiring prioritization plan, which, we already have that, right? But still, there are huge challenges there. And I'll give you an example, maybe two examples. So as many of you know, Jack Brown who was obviously a force to be reckoned with, and a fantastic instructor, and also the only PhD canola breeder in the United States. He retired. Okay, so that is a critical crop, certainly in the Pacific Northwest. There is no breeder that currently doing that work. Okay, so that's a priority. We can't fill that now. Okay, another example basically is a shoemaker, right, who is the forage crops extension specialist for a critical, Glenn has done a phenomenal job retiring. Critical area of the state, critical area for research and extension. We don't have the money to fill that position either. So that's sort of the decision making that we are faced with as a college. So you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. We can't fill either one now. So how do you prioritize with respect to those two positions? That's only the beginning. There are many others now as we see more retirements in critical areas moving forward. So we have some real challenges. And I would say we're going to have some understanding that we recognize how important these positions are, but we just simply don't have the dollars to move forward at this time. So we're going to have to work together, remain positive, as we face these challenges. They're serious, and again, it's almost impossible to make a decision. And obviously, not everyone's going to be happy with the decisions that you make. Next slide. Okay, so we have a new president, and this is another reason, why I'm enthusiastic about the campus and the college moving forward. So gosh, I don't want to get too carried away, but I'll tell this story to the group. When I first started as the dean, I went up to the provost and I talked about the teaching budget, right? So we got allocated. We have about $3.5 million that comes to the campus to support our teaching program. And I didn't think that was enough. I thought we actually did more teaching than the money that we get for teaching. And I asked the provost, it's John Winsick, who isn't the provost anymore. I asked him, where did that money, how was that money derived? What is that $3.5 million based on? And he looked at me and he said he had no idea. He said, basically, it's historical, and we get that money because we got that money last year. It's not based on anything that we do. So in that sense, which speaks to the way the budget is managed and handled on the campus, that it's just more historical and it's not based on performance, right? So that is going to change. President Green has formed a work group that's basically put together a sort of we call it it's kind of a modified RCM model, which is it's short for responsibility centered management. It speaks to more incentives. It speaks to setting goals. If you meet those goals, you get funding. If you don't meet those goals, funding are reduced. So there's more accountability on the campus for how dollars are going to be spent. And my feeling as a college, from a teaching perspective and everything else that we do, I think we are excelling on this campus. So the vision here going forward is that I welcome this new model. I think we're going to benefit from it. I think we're going to be treated more fairly, if you will, and we're going to get more resources because we are doing a great job. So that may be a little bit too optimistic, considering what we're facing here. But at the same time, I'm very optimistic about that moving forward. I'd already mentioned the fact that the campus is coming together around a comprehensive plan for student recruitment, which also is phenomenal. Excuse me for a second. The campus this year, and certainly CALS, we are focused on undergraduate recruitment, and we want to, and retention, right? We want those students to come back to campus. So that is moving forward, and I think we are doing a phenomenal job. Now, whether we're going to exceed the number of students in CALS this year over last year, we're going to be very close. We're either going to be greater than what we were last year or right on the mark. And I say that that's significant because we are facing this pandemic. We haven't been unable to bring any students to campus. Everything has been virtual for the most part. We just had, 2 recent U Idaho bound events on the campus, but typically we start much earlier in the year. And obviously a big part of our success at recruitment is bringing students to campus. When they come to campus, they see the campus, we're a lot more successful in getting students to actually enroll. So again, the fact that we have been so successful, I think, is remarkable. It's a testament to Matt Domit's shop and his folks, the ambassadors. All of our faculty have stepped up, our staff advisors in all the departments, and there is no question that one of the major ways for us to sell this college is, number one, to have students on the campus, and then another huge part of that to get them to campus is to interact with our faculty and our staff. If we can do that, we can yield students to come to the college. So I feel very good about that. If it were not for this pandemic, I think we would have blown past last year's numbers. That's not the case, but again, I think we are in remarkable shape considering the challenges that we basically had to face. Okay, so I talked a little bit about new replacement in faculty positions, and obviously that's critical to the future. There's no question. We are still continuing with hiring, and so I talk about a hiring freeze, and that's in parentheses, but there's always exceptions to a hiring freeze, right? And I think everybody knows that. So we're moving forward with 3 endowed faculty positions, right? We just hired the endowed professor for Barley, the Idaho Barley Commission. We are in the process of moving forward with recruitment for the endowed professor the endowed chair from the Idaho Wheat Commission. We're moving forward with an endowed chair in post-harvest potato storage physiology funded by the Idaho Potato Commission. So the message here is that if there is an endowment and we make a commitment to the industry to fund that position, that even in the wake of a crisis and a hiring freeze, if there's an endowment that supports a position, we're going to do our best to follow through. It's an expectation and an obligation that we make to these commissions, basically, that's part of the agreement where they come up with $1 million or $2 million to support these positions. So again, we are moving forward. I think that's exciting. At the same time, there are some real challenges around, other positions that don't have these endowments and how we prioritize moving forward. So that speaks to the next bullet point, which is the fact that we did replace Don Morishita's position at Kimberly in weed science. Now, this was really before the COVID-19 crisis, right? So this came in kind of just under the wire, but it makes sense that obviously, it's a testament to Don and his program and how highly regarded he is by the multiple commissions and industries that he, that support him basically, and he has given, great information too. So basically we went forward and we went ahead and we filled that position. So we're pleased we could do that under the wire. So the message here is that as a college, we try to, we're underfunded. We don't have enough money, but we try to listen to stakeholders basically. And if there's a real need out there and we can possibly fill a critical position, we will do that. So, the last bullet, and this can lead me into the discussion about the initiatives. We have tremendous momentum in this college moving forward, and part of my, the vision, if you will, of coming in as the dean is to focus on faculty support, faculty success, and a big part of that is having facilities that, in a sense, reinforce what faculty are doing. And so, a big part of it is to focus on facilities. Now, much of the activity that we're doing with facilities is with private donations, right? So that's a message that has to get out there. And so in that sense, if you have like Vandal Brand Meats, right, the new agri-beef food science innovation center honoring Ron Richard, that is entirely funded really on private donations. So the notion that we can take money there and use that to offset a budget cut for teaching on the campus, we can't, right? There's different colors of money. So that point needs to be made. So in a sense, a big concern is that we maintain this momentum. There's still fundraising that has to go on for a number of these facility projects, if you will. And clearly, when you think about fundraising now, given the state of the economy, given how everyone is in financial stress, we have to have a little empathy. We have to be understanding. So we're trying to balance that sort of a framework on, development, full bore, at the same time recognizing that a lot of our stakeholders, You know, there's so much uncertainty that many of you know better than I, just in terms of what the future holds for this pandemic and for agriculture. You know, we have to be empathetic. We have to be understanding. At the same time, we don't want to lose this momentum. I would say that President Green, and this is absolutely critical, he has to support the projects in the college moving forward, and he does. So, you know, when I get to Parma, I'll probably highlight that, but it's very clear that he is a supporter of all the projects that we are moving forward. I think that's pretty exciting, and I'm not sure that we've had that support in the past. So in that sense, again, another reason for me to be optimistic about the college moving forward. So with that, if I could have the next slide. I'm going to talk about facilities, and I guess on the left-hand side is a panel there, and this was a headline in the Capital Press, came out in more than 2 years ago, in March of 2018, where, you know, at that point, I kind of made an announcement that, you know, our facilities, we need to invest in them, right? And if we look at all the facilities, right? So the focus now is Parma, but the idea is that we need $25 million to really invigorate and rejuvenate all of our R&E centers. So that's kind of the plan moving forward. It takes years to sort of build a base of support for a major effort like that. And so in that sense, we fired the first volley, if you will, about that, and called people's attention to the situation. And now going after that funding is what we're what we are doing and trying to move it forward. And again, our facilities are very old. We have some great faculty. We have some great new faculty. We're going to recruit new faculty, and having facilities that are commensurate with what those new faculty do and making it easier for them to do their work is a big part of that. And so again, it is something that I'm passionate about, and I'll say it on the onset here. The response from stakeholders is remarkable. So pretty much they have stepped up. The support is phenomenal. And why are they supporting the college? They're supporting the college because of what you do as faculty, right? The history is there. You're delivering information. They recognize that, and they're investing in you, and they're investing in the future of the college and your performance. And I view that as being critical to keep agriculture strong as over the next 50 years, because that's really what we're looking at here. Next slide, please. Okay, next slide. We're going to run through them very quickly. So we just finished this, the new classroom and outreach facility, Nancy M. Cummings Roosters Extension Education Center in Salmon. Maybe some of you have been out there. If you stop by, please look at it. It's absolutely beautiful. Obviously, many of you know this is our major cow-calf operation in the state. It's also connected to the research going on at the Rinker Rock Creek Ranch, because the cows from Salmon or from Nancy M. Cummings go down there pretty much over the summer and are part of a major research programs going on there. This is a beautiful facility, and I don't want to spend too much time on it, but John Hall knows more about it than I do, certainly. There is that little archway kind of in the middle on the, well, you can see it on the top slide is when it's in construction. The bottom is when it's finished. As you walk into the doors there on the right-hand side, you know, basically are the offices for the faculty and for the staff and for the graduate students. And then if you make a left, really, that's kind of there's a 120-seat classroom there for education and outreach. There's kind of a breakout room. There's a small kitchen there. And that's really for the staff and the faculty and you know, basically for education, but it's also more for the community to use as well. So for FFH and for 4-H, and it's a beautiful facility. It gives us greater access to the community. And so I look at it as investment here, you know, not only benefits the, you know, cattle industry that's critical in the state, benefits our researchers, but it's also, it just reinforces our connection to the community. And when I think about that, and you look at this facility, and we need to recruit more undergraduate students from all over Idaho. And the idea that you have, you know, K through 12 students in some way, shape, or form end up at this facility. They see the facility, they get educated there, they meet our faculty, staff, and students. You know, my feeling is it's going to pay dividends from an undergraduate recruitment perspective moving forward. So I see a facility like this as multifaceted in terms of the contribution it's going to make to the state of Idaho. Next slide, please. Oh, yeah. So I don't want to, if we can go back to that, we were going to have an opening of that in December. We ended up canceling that because of the pandemic. Actually, we're going to do it in May. We canceled it in May. We were going to do it in November. We've canceled it now in November. We moved it to the spring. So again, we'll have a celebration there. And one thing we don't do is celebrate our successes enough. It's sad that we had to push off the celebration here, but again, we do plan to do that. Next slide. Okay, so we took ownership of the Rinker Rock Creek Ranch. Many of you know this. It's a phenomenal 10,400. We call it a living laboratory near Haley. And basically, this is a collaboration between the College of Natural Resources and the College of Ag and Life Sciences, Ecosystem Services, cattle, range, foraging, partnership with Nature Conservancy and Wood River Land Trust. You know, there's work going on there that I think is critical to all Idahoans. Everyone cares about range. Most of Idaho is range. We have ecosystem services. You have cattle grazing. You have endangered species. We have fire issues. We have invasive species. We have riparian habitat. We have basically the Rock Creek drains into the Magic Valley Reservoir. There's a net fish coming up to spawn. There's riparian habitat. All these things converge, right? So we have a number of faculty from CNR and from the college doing research there to address issues that I think will inform range managers moving forward and about how best to address some of these sort of sensitive areas between cattle and ecosystem services. So that's kind of the vision moving forward, and that is becoming a reality. We've just hired a new operations manager and a director of research that will basically sort of oversee operations there. And again, this is something that we could not have done with support from the states, since they provided additional funding to the agricultural extension and education budget last year to hire these individuals. So next slide. The new seed potato germplasm facility on the Moscow campus is moving forward. It's very exciting. We're going to basically co-locate it with the Meat Science and Innovation Center as well. I'll show a slide of that coming up very soon. We'll have groundbreaking well, let me see now, we're past the spring, so maybe that's past tense. We just basically signed a contract with the engineering firm. We're working with the state, with the Department of Public Works. We just signed that contract this month. So they will actually not break ground in the spring, they'll break ground in August. And we are hoping to have a groundbreaking, we'll see how things go, maybe in the November of this year. It all depends on how this pandemic crisis goes. If we can't do it in the fall, we'll probably move it to the spring, and I think we're more likely to do that. But the point to make here is that groundbreaking will take place. It is a little bit more than a $5 million project. We have money from the Potato Commission coming in. We have $3 million from the state legislature. We have $250,000 from Northwest Farm Credit Services, and we're putting in about $500,000 related to potatoes and sort of the potato germplasm, the royalties from potatoes as well. Again, going into this facility from the college. Next slide. Okay, the Beef Meat Science and Innovation Center honoring Ron Richard, still moving forward. We have fundraising to do here as well. Going to be some challenges, I think, with respect to, given the economy of the state. But again, we're optimistic. We have a lot of, I think, major donors that are interested and that are, I don't want to say lined up, but we have already made contact with, and we're pretty optimistic about being successful moving forward. And again, this is really in support of I will say the livestock industry in the state. A lot of research going on there that's critical, and then also the idea of workforce training, both from a student perspective, and then a lot of workforce training with the industry as well. One example, if you're not familiar with our meat science program, is that we do a lot of training for the WinCo meat supervisors across the country. They come to Moscow. They basically get trained here. And again, that's something that supports the WinCo operation nationwide. We just did WinCo training down in Kuna at the huge CS packing facility there. And again, just trying to reach out and educating the existing workforce. So we are continuing to raise funds. We're making great progress, but we're excited about this facility coming to fruition. Next slide. And this is a slide of the campus. And again, we have Perimeter Road on your left-hand side. The Kibbe Dome is to the parking lot on the right. The Idaho Pavilion, right, is where the old Meat Science facility is up on the left. So this is going to be this kind of Perimeter Road as the frontage road. You can see where the seed potato facility will be and where Vandal Brand Meats will be as well. We're excited about this. We, and I say this kind of tongue in cheek, but we have meat and potatoes together in one place. And I love that because I think it does represent two iconic commodities in the state and two of our largest, right? So from a potato perspective and then from a livestock perspective, they're critical components of Idaho agriculture. And the idea that we are doing major research and extension and education of students for these critical areas of the state, I think is very important. And I love the fact that we have two new major facilities that are highly visible on this campus on Perimeter Road, reminding this campus of its roots, which actually is the College of Ag and the Agricultural Experiment Station. Let's not forget, where this college came from, and basically, what its founding college was, and where, to be blunt, where its greatest strength is as well. So I look at this as being symbolic of many, many things. And again, we're looking at two new facilities, and I think for generations to come, these are going to be something that we can be very, very proud of. So next slide. Okay, I'm almost done. Just a few more things. We are moving forward with the expansion of Parma to form the Idaho Center for Plant and Soil Health. So obviously we had a bit of a hiccup last year with respect to the funding from the state. I think we've learned quite a bit from that interaction. And, in that sense, I would say that we made a few mistakes. We recognize that. The positive thing about what happened last year was that I don't think there's anyone in the state legislature that does not know about our plan to expand Parma. So in that sense, it's not news to anyone. And so we made a real effort to publicize that. So my hope is when we go back in this year, making a request that, we will have success. There is no guarantee with the legislature. There's no question about that. I think this has been, the challenge has been amplified by the fact that we've got this pandemic and there's going to be less resources going into the state. That being said, there will be funding coming out of the Permanent Building Fund for facilities statewide. We hope that we are going to be on that list of funding priorities. I will say, and this goes back to President Green, that he has endorsed Parma as the #1 ask for the University of Idaho going forward in this legislative session. So the stage is set. Historically, they're aware of it. We've got President Green's support, we've got stakeholder support. So we just need to make this happen. So in that sense, it is a $7 million project. We're contributing close to $1 million from CALS. And again, a lot of this funding came from the Parma R&E Center. So again, it is money that really can't be used for anything else. We have raised actually more than 2.57. I think we raised almost 80% of the $3 million from stakeholders. We feel confident of getting to the full $3 million by the end of the year. And then of course we have the $3 million request into the state. So we're excited about that. And again, it's a testament to our faculty who are there, that they've done such great things, and it's a testament to them and faculty that have preceded them that there's such strong stakeholder support. They recognize what has been accomplished there in the past. They want to support the faculty that are currently there and new faculty that we will be hiring. We're going to need, I think, a new facility to hire those best faculty and to enable our existing faculty to do the work that they're capable of. So we're excited about this. We're optimistic. But again, I'll say we're cautiously optimistic moving forward. Next slide. Okay, the last one, and maybe the biggest of all, and I will you know, I can obviously give a separate presentation just about this. So Cafe is rocketing along, and it's amazing how much progress we have made in the past year. So we actually have we just again signed a contract with Department of Public Works. We have an engineering and a kind of design firm that will come to campus. And they're going to meet with the college. They're going to meet with U of I leadership, and we're going to move forward with the planning of the research dairy at Rupert. So, in that sense, it's pretty exciting. The project is moving forward, and I'm not sure exactly, you know, how much detail I should go into. You can read this slide. We obviously have the programmatic areas. Maybe I'll just talk through those, and then I'll be done. We're going to do obviously animal-related research at the dairy, and there's agronomic research, and just talking about those two things here. The agronomic research has really taken on a life of its own, and that was always maybe a vision for Cafe, and that, you know, it is. When you think about the dairy industry, and it's been a challenge to, when we talk about Cafe and people saying, well, it's dairy centric. Well, it is, but it's much broader than that, because the dairy industry is linked broadly to agricultural production in the state. And they're linked from two perspectives, right? One is nutrient management, which is fertilizer. And secondly, a lot of the crops grown in the state are used to feed the cows, right? So there's a connection. So you can't deal with the research dairy without the connection to agriculture. And so then when we speak about agriculture, we have, you know, we have millions of acres, right, of irrigated agriculture in the Magic Valley, the crop rotations there, you know, all of which are really connected to the dairy. So, you know, you've got sugar beets, and you've got potatoes, and you've got wheat, and you've got more barley, and you've got beans, and you've got alfalfa, and you've got corn, and you've got all these rotations going on, right, connected to the dairy, some more strongly than others. But is there a method to that madness? Is there a way to step back and have a demonstration research farm that will actually look at agricultural sustainability and regenerative agriculture in the Magic Valley over the next 50 years? Is there a way to set up an experiment where you actually evaluate sustainability and regenerative agriculture in that context, where you look at healthy soil, look at water use efficiency, and look at water discharge and water contamination, surface and groundwater, all these things that are so critical to the state's agriculture moving forward? And I would say that is what has happened with the demonstration farm. It's taken on a life of its own, and it's connected to the dairy, but it's separate as well, and it stands on its own 2 feet. The ability to generate support, the Anheuser-Busch gift I think supports that. I think the tremendous grant from USDA, the $10 million grant to support sort of sustainability and developing a new bioeconomy for the dairy industry based on nutrient management, which is really fertilizer for many of these agronomic crops. I mean, it's just phenomenal. And I look at this as only the beginning as we move Cafe forward. There will be food science research, and part of the strategy to sort of move food science into animal and vet science was to strengthen the connection between food science and what's happening in Cafe in southern Idaho. So I don't want to talk more about that, but that's the connection that I wanted to make from comments I made a little bit earlier, where, you know, looking at the economic impact and marketing is a big part of this, obviously outreach and extension, and then a big part in collaboration with the College of Southern Idaho is workforce and economic development. We did a webinar with the CSI faculty and with the new president about a month ago, had tremendous participation. Maybe some of you were part of that as well. We actually preceded that with a webinar with the BYUI faculty and with the Dean of the College of Ag and Life Sciences there, again, just to bring them up to date with Cafe. There is interest there, and Cafe is going to be a regional facility. And you know, unless we have our other instructional institutions partner with us, Cafe will be less effective than it could be. So it's important to keep them up to date. We've made phenomenal progress over the past year, and that was part of the webinar moving. The webinar was to bring them up to date. And again, we'll have more of these moving forward. If I can have the next slide, and I probably have taken too much time, so I will end it there. But I appreciate the chance to share this information and maybe a lot of some free thinking that that went into that. But I hope that I imparted to you my enthusiasm for leading this college and the reasons that I think we have to be optimistic about the future. That does not mean there are not significant challenges that we're going to face, because we're almost, maybe I'll end on a negative note here, we're almost at a breaking point, in a sense. So we have weathered the budget storm without really any major changes. In other words, we haven't really terminated any contracts with faculty moving forward. And I'm hoping we can maintain that. If we take more budget cuts, it's going to be hard to keep the college intact, right? The other piece of the puzzle there is that you keep getting these cuts and yet you're still delivering the same level of information, right? So that can only continue up to a certain point. Sooner or later, the budget cuts are going to be impacting the amount, hopefully not the quality, but the amount of information that we are delivering. So we'll have to play it by ear as we move forward. But again, I'm proud of what the college has done. I love being the dean of this college, and so I think we have reasons to be optimistic moving forward. So I will end the comments there, and if there are questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them. So Kasia, thank you.
Thank you so much, Dean. That was great information, and we're just so grateful that you took time out of your busy schedule to talk with us today, give us some really good information. I wanted to draw your attention to 3 comments in the group chat. Joseph Sagers wanted to thank you for addressing the Glenn Shoemaker void. And then Reed concurred, saying that the forage and alfalfa position is critical for us, especially if you take into account the value of forage used on farm, and it becomes a major economic driver of our economy. And finally, David Callister just wanted to comment that meat and potatoes are important to Idaho. I wanted to make sure you saw those comments. So thank you for everything that you're doing. Does anybody have any questions for Dean Parrella? Don't be shy. We've got time to entertain some questions. We have about 10 to 15 minutes. So if you wanted to ask a question or make a comment or whatever, now's your chance.
Now is your chance. Absolutely.
Yeah, I got a question. So with those positions that aren't filled, including the extension positions that we have, like I mean, you said we're just playing those things by ear. I mean, but your goal, I mean, your hope in the end, what do you see, assuming everything comes out of this perfect and everything works out great and we have all the unlimited money in the world? What I mean, is your hope to actually see those positions filled in the future, or are we kind of trying to go a new direction with where it fits with the current situation?
So yeah, I don't know, Joe, if I said playing it by ear, that probably isn't a good thing to say. We're trying to be strategic about hiring as we always are. And one thing with Barbara Petty leading extension, and anyway, it'd be an interesting discussion to get into. I'm a firm believer in extension, sort of, it's relationship building, right? And historically, it's one-on-one contact. And one of the things we always say, I think last year, 440,000 sort of individual contacts from our extension faculty in the state. And it's just phenomenal, right? And so in order to do that, you need people, right? So we need the extension positions filled. So ever since I've been the dean, that's been a priority. And so basically, I think we pretty much filled every vacant extension position we had in the state. And maybe that's not entirely accurate, but I think right now we have as many or more extension faculty than we have ever had. So, that's sort of the goal, if you will. And, that being said, we're always not going to have enough money to fund all the positions. So, there's always going to have to be a strategy and some sort of a stock taking and different input and trying to prioritize. One thing that's critical in this whole process is that we have departments, right? So we have department chairs, and they sit down, they have a plan for positions, right? So it's one thing for the dean, for me to say, that Glenn Shoemaker's position is critical, that's got to come from Bob Trepepi and the Department of Plant Sciences. That's got to come from them. If that is a top priority for plant sciences, you know, then it's kind of a no-brainer. If so so is it Jack Brown or is it Glenn Shoemaker, right? I mean, that's a decision that they're going to have to make, and we can weigh in on that decision, but basically it's got to come from the department. So, you know, all these things we try to piece together to make the most informed. And obviously, you know, Jack Brown, for example, there's a teaching component there. You know, Glenn doesn't do, you know, it isn't a formal instructor on the campus, so there's a little bit of a difference. So you can see where things may shake out separately when you try to put the pros and cons of who you're going to, you know, what position you're going to fill. But again, it's a collective process. So I don't know what the goal is, to try and fill as many positions as possible. You know, we'll have to. We're going to be challenged going forward with you know, more budget holdbacks and you know, and with a teaching position on the campus, you know, it's interesting. And again, this is getting into the weeds maybe, but that's not under our control. So for example, the Jack Brown position, if we decide that that's a position, then that goes to the provost basically. And then there will be a committee on the campus that will talk about teaching priorities on the campus. Of course, we're using teaching dollars to fund some of that position. So we're not autonomous in that sense. Now, when it comes to Glenn Shoemaker, we're autonomous because that is an extension. It's an ag experiment station, an extension position. So we control those funds. So a little bit of a difference. So again, you know, what may seem like it's, I don't know if anything is simple or trivial, you know, it gets complicated very, very quickly. And one thing that I am hoping for here, you know, you know, I sort of got off on a tangent there when I talked about the difference between, you know, teaching on the campus versus research and extension off campus. We are going to have more of our extension research faculty off campus step up and teach. That doesn't mean they have to come to campus, but I think, you know, their ability to educate students through online education, which I think, you know, is perhaps the silver lining in this pandemic. I think we're going to be structurally better able to have that effective a line of communication. And so I also think it's going to be a better way to justify sort of these off-campus positions. And to be very blunt here, you know, my take is that if we have our off-campus faculty step up and, you know, and not teach an entire course. I'm not talking about, I mean, that's a possibility if there's interest, but for them to step up to give guest lectures in their area, you know, to me, that is profoundly impactful for students, because you have faculty that are on the front lines, that are advising growers, that are dealing with the real world. And sometimes we have faculty on the campus that are not quite aligned with the real world, right? I realize I may get into trouble for saying that to a certain extent, but when it comes to on the ground knowledge about what's happening and dealing with growers on a day-to-day basis, we have some faculty on the campus that do that, and that's wonderful, but clearly that is a way of life if you're off campus. And to be able to make that connection for students in the classroom, you know, in my mind, that increases our ability to be effective instructors rather than decrease it. So I'm hoping that there is going to be a way forward there as well. Something that we have talked to the, you know, basically with Barbara and our four district directors and Nav as well. You know, we've talked openly about more engagement from a teaching perspective. And, you know, that was going to be a big theme of the All Cows conference, right? The extension conference we were going to do in May this past year, or was it maybe earlier, you know, was going to be to sort of make that connection. And again, that's still a theme going forward. I think it's going to be more and more important as we face fewer faculty in general, and with still the mandate to teach. And obviously I'm answering this question which is maybe too long. We took a 20% cut in the teaching budget on the campus this year in the college, a 20% cut in the budget. And yet we are still delivering the same level of instruction that we were before. And so that is a tribute to the faculty, because we have fewer faculty, we have less money, we're still delivering the instruction. So to say that these faculty need help is an understatement. We're going to try and fill more teaching positions on the campus. So again, I don't think we'll ever get back to where we were, but I think one of the ways to address that teaching deficit, if you will, is to engage off-campus faculty. So my hope is we're going to have people step up big time to lend a hand. So
Dean
with that,
Parrella, I've got something I can add on that. I know that Glenn Shoemaker, when he had his online forage class, I taught that 2 different separate years and did the insect part of that class. So some of that stuff we've already done a little bit, and it was very effective. The students were able to ask us what we're seeing out in the field, even in a different part of the state. And it was pretty seamless when we did it. So, because
right,
even
we have a number of faculty that do step up and teach. So I don't want to suggest that they haven't done that, but I'm hoping it's going to be more of a formal thing. So yeah, that sounds great.
All right, thank you for that great question and commentary. Does anyone else have any questions or follow up with the dean, and since we have him here? Well, overall, I've been kind of keeping track of who's been able to attend, and I have 28 people were able to hop on the call at one time or another. And I just want to thank everyone for joining us and for your time. I know it's our schedules are very busy right now, and I really appreciate you guys taking time to share your thoughts with us. I especially want to thank Dean to come and talk with us today. And with that, I think we'll conclude this session. I look forward to next session. Mark the calendars. August 4th and August 18th are the 2 dates for the remaining sessions. And you'll get to hear about forecasting economics with Ben Eborn, and you'll also get to hear a presentation from Lida. I hope I'm saying your name right. Lida Chen will be presenting on soils. And then on the 18th, I wish I had my calendar in front of me. You can see the schedule right here. If you scroll up in the chat, there's a link there you can link to show you the schedule. So please take a look at that and join us on August 4th and August 18th. Everyone have a great day, stay safe, and thank you again for coming.
Hey, thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Kasia.